Today, we're going to be talking about pricing psychology, getting sellers to choose the right price without putting pressure on people. You guys can see the market is still just a little different than it has been over the last couple years. If we're pricing stuff wrong, we're typically noticing it, and we're noticing it pretty quickly. But who here is still talking to sellers and you give them a comp and their comp is just way above what you tell them when you come in, right? I mean, I feel like that's almost everybody. So that's why I thought we would talk about this today. Why do you think some sellers ignore market data even when it's obvious that their price is too high? What do you think?
Emotions.
They see it on Zillow.
They have a certain number in their head for what they want out of the property, especially if they're trying to get something else. So they need you to hit that number.
Yeah, they're like, man, I know I paid 200 grand for my first house and it's worth 500, but I'm really trying to buy this $1 million home next. And so if you can't make that happen, right, it's your fault. But I think Mia hit it right on the head. Really, a lot of emotion. Pricing, at least from the seller standpoint, is rarely about logic. It's almost always to them an emotional thing. So it's really our job to manage emotion with strategy. So we're going to talk about 3 different pricing biases today that every seller has, things that we can use to hopefully get them off of that overpriced train and over where they need to be. The first thing we're going to talk about is anchoring. For the sheer definition of price anchoring, right? We want to think that the price that is mentioned first becomes that mental baseline. It becomes that anchor. Well, the reason anchoring matters is because if the price first mentioned becomes the baseline, then once that seller starts to fixate on a number, whether it's from Zillow, whether it's from a neighbor, whether it's even from another agent that came in before you, every lower suggestion now feels like a loss. So even if it's not a loss, even if we're coming in with the right advice, with the right price, they feel like they're now taking a loss because that baseline was higher than originally thought for them. So how do we use it strategically? Well, we want to be the ones that set our own anchor early, right? So how do we do that? You know, sometimes we get on a listing appointment, and I'm guilty of this. We'll get to price, you finally get to it, and you're like, what do you think your home is worth? You ever do that? I always get mad when they're like, well, you're supposed to tell me first because they don't want to give it up to you. The more you start thinking about this psychology of anchoring, you likely just don't want to ask them that, because the reality is what you want to do is you want to anchor that price first. One way could be to maybe say something along the lines of, as you're going over the comps, based on where homes in your range are trending, most are selling between $480,000 and $500,000. See, now you set the anchor, and now you can ask them, does that sound close to what you were expecting? See, now you set the anchor, you give them a price baseline, and now they still get to tell you what? Oh, I think you're crazy. I wanted 550, or yeah, that's right in line with what I thought. That's great. Or, ooh, that's actually more than I thought, which only happens like 1 out of 100 times. But see, now you've at least set the anchor. So once you present it, also think about presenting it in a range, right? That 480 to 500. See, when we present that range instead of a single number, see, we control that anchor window. Now we can say, is that close to what you were expecting? See, second thing we're going to talk about is loss aversion. What is loss aversion? It is the idea that people fear losing money twice as much as they enjoy gaining it. So what that means ultimately is that you'd have to give somebody double the gain to combat half of the loss. So the idea of them losing 10, you'd have to give them a $20,000 gain to combat that $10,000 loss, okay? If a seller holds on to an unrealistic price, why do they do that? Well, they do that because they feel like lowering it, they're now losing their equity. So when you are, one, either trying to get them to list lower, fear of that loss is huge for them. But 2, if you do list high, now you have to start convincing them to lower their price as well. And as now you're convincing them to do price drops, that same loss aversion comes in. For every 5 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand, you go to get them to try to drop that price, they are now dealing with the same thing, where now they're thinking, man, I am just getting cranked if I lose this money. How do we combat it? We want to shift the focus from a price reduction to an opportunity protection, right? We're not convincing them to drop the price. We're actually convincing them to not lose more money by not dropping the price. They fear a loss. So if we call them and say, hey, I think we really need to drop this 10 grand, what do they see? They see a $10,000 loss, right? So let's price it right from the start to protect that momentum. You're not introducing a gain to them, you're actually introducing it as a loss. You're telling them, hey, if you were to price here, you're actually probably losing about 1% a week on your sales price just because you're gonna lose those buyers. You're gonna lose that momentum. His example, he said 650, she said 680. So how do you rephrase that? Well, you're not losing $30,000, Mia, by pricing it right. You're actually saving $30,000 in time and carrying costs by selling it sooner. Imagine if we didn't have appraisals, we didn't have inspections, we didn't have commissions. Imagine it was gone in 3 days, so we had 5 or 10 offers, right? Okay, great. That sounds awesome. Wouldn't you like that? Now imagine the loss of having no offers for 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. Now what happens when we start to drop our price, right? They're afraid they're gonna lose by listening to you. You have to tweak that and say, no, you're gonna lose if you don't listen to me. Everybody's negative, right, in this world today. So everything that they're coming up with, they're trying to combat you on it, and you're trying to make them realize, okay. And again, that's going to funnel into ego versus equity big, right? So what is ego versus equity? Well, that one's more self-explanatory, right? Sellers often see their home as an extension of identity, not an asset. People that are living in their homes, that is who they are. And the longer they've been in their house, the longer that is the extension of who they are. It is their identity. They have raised their kids there. They have grown old there. They have done all of these things. So you have to keep that in mind, that when people are talking to you about their homes, you're still going to keep that positive side. So ego versus equity, market data doesn't reward sentiment. So the reality is only features buyers value matter. So what is the buyer value? That's what you have to get across to your seller, because we've essentially talked about the anchoring, we've talked about loss aversion, we've talked about ego versus equity, but now the last way is you show them, right? Your CMA needs to start telling a story. What is your story? Act 1, what sellers think their home is worth. Act 2, what the market already decided. And now how do you position their home to win, right? That's Act 3 of the story. Would you rather list your home so that every single person that comes in and looks at it has to justify the price? Or would you rather every single showing that comes in and looks at your home has to have the conversation with their agent about how soon they have to get an offer in so they don't miss out? That's the question. Because the key takeaway is, remember, pricing isn't about convincing, it's about guiding emotion back to reality. So that's it today, guys. We'll be here next week. Let us know what you'd like to see. And thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for tuning in to one of our weekly training calls. Obviously, you caught the recorded session, but if you're interested in catching any of our live sessions that we do them typically on Mondays. I'm gonna put the link below. So if you wanna join any of our trainings live so that you can participate, feel free to come. This is for our EXP group that we have here, our Omega group of agents, but it's open to anybody that wants to join, really. So if you're looking for coaching, if you're looking for training, feel free to hit that link below, and we'll see you on one of our live calls.